And we will get going. I want to take a second to introduce you to my colleague, Chris Crothers. He's a program officer here. Some of you may work with him. He has the Delaware and the Northeast U.S. portfolio, but he is going to start the portal training by talking to you about a couple changes that we have made to the system.
Thanks, Mark. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm guessing that one big question that everyone has is what's going to be different going forward. Well, just know that the proposal elements of the grants process are going to remain very similar, but there are a few changes that we've included in this transition between the paper process that we had and the online portal that Mark's going to be showing you shortly. So let's look at what's different for the competitive proposal specifically. So you'll see at the very left of the slide, there is no more page one of the application. Thanks to the survey that you responded to, we now have information that has been put into our system with your organizational details. So there's no need to re-enter this information into the application each and every time you apply for a grant. The next two that I'm going to talk about have been put in place to help the fund more accurately analyze the grants we make, focusing on place and who is actually benefiting from the investment. So the first one is the geographic area served by the proposal. This is something we hadn't had before. This way we're going to be able to kind of allow you to enter where the work's going to take place. So for instance, if your organization is located in Wilmington, Delaware, but you're actually serving youth in Chester County, Pennsylvania, we'll be able to track that going forward. And not only is that important to us, but we'll be reporting on a national kind of mapping system so that our investments will connect with other foundations' investments and people can understand how philanthropic giving and grants are working in the country. The last one is the population groups that are served by the proposal. Just like geographic area that we just talked about, you'll be able to select various demographic details about those you hope to serve, helping us narrow down and understand who's benefiting from the grants and investments that the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund is making. So what's going to be different with regard to the competitive proposals? So when you get into the portal, you're going to notice that we reordered the narrative questions for better flow. Our questions are now organized in such a way that your story should kind of build a logical, clear case for the proposal. And when you look closely at the order and the kinds of questions we're asking, they really zero down into the why, what, how, when, who, and particularly what is going to be different. And you'll be able to share that with the trustees more of in a story narrative form. The former cover letter has now become the case statement. It's still going to serve the same function, and we still encourage the leadership of the organization, whether it be CEO, pastor, college president, to use this space to make a compelling case for the proposed work and explain why it's a priority for the institution. So going forward, this section will not be on letterhead as we had asked for previously, and we don't require you to scan it, so it'll capture a signature. It's going to be all online in that one portal that you'll be able to submit, but it still allows our trustees to hear the voice of leadership. All right, and then formerly we had a question that focused on the description of the work, and it was kind of very broad and very vague. So in order to help you kind of tell your story better, we split this into 3 distinct parts so we could be very clear about what we're trying to pull out of the proposal. So the first one is the project summary. It was kind of embedded in the description of the work prior, but here we're asking you specifically to tell us in one sentence the amount that you're requesting, duration of the request, the proposed activity, and what you hope will change and for whom. The second piece is the rationale. This is where we really want to dig into understanding the need, the challenge, or the opportunity. Essentially, the space there is going to allow you to tell the trustees why this work is necessary and important, as well as provide them a little context about what you hope to change. And lastly, the description of the work now is very focused. We really expect kind of like a broad 10,000-foot view of what you propose to do in order to address the need, the challenge, or opportunity that you outlined above in the rationale section. Also, you can tell the trustees who you expect to benefit and how. Of course, we'll dig a little bit deeper into the rationale and description of the work shortly, but that just kind of gives you a quick overview. So let's take a second to talk about the grant reporting and what's going to be different there. So all grants now have a standardized report to complete. So previously, you may remember that if you received a technical assistance or feasibility or a repair and restoration grant, you would need to submit a final report, but we didn't provide any kind of questions or direction in order to complete the report. Now each grant will have a report that's automatically generated with specific questions for you to address. We've heard so far that this has been very helpful to folks, that they are no longer having to wander in the wilderness and assume what we hope to hear or learn from the grant. So it's been very helpful. And in the live demo, Mark's going to review where you're going to find these reports on the portal and how to complete them. So second, multi-year competitive grants, there are going to be two changes that you need to be aware of. The first one, again, is a standardized interim report. So previously, if you had a multi-year grant, competitive grant, you would submit a yearly interim report, but we didn't, again, provide you a standardized report to complete. Now each year, grantees will complete an interim report with a few very brief questions that really kind of zero in on the progress of the grant over the previous 12 months. Really allows program staff to understand where you're going, and if you run into any barriers, also kind of keeps a communications loop in place. So if we need to talk you through how to modify a grant or modify expectations, we can do that at that point. Also, we're going to, besides the interim report, we're going to have a final report as well in the last period of the grant for multi-year grants. So previously, grantees with multi-year grants completed one final report at the end of the period. Well, sometimes it's reported in reporting inconsistencies, where we might only learn about the work over the last year, while others talked about the cumulative work over the full period, but provided little detail on what happened in the final year of the grant. So going forward, folks will be able to complete an interim report that really focuses on the last 12 months, and then a final report that reflects the total grant period and shares cumulative results and outcomes. The last interim report will be due within 30 days of the close of the grant, and the final report will then be due 60 days at the close of the grant. So that's another change that you can expect to see going forward. So while we're kind of going through this, the program staff really thought this might be a great opportunity just to touch base and check in and talk briefly about what are the elements of a very cohesive proposal and what the trustees are looking for. So going back to a few things we had talked about previously. So let's talk about rationale. So again, this is really zeroing in on why the work is necessary. It'll set the context and build a strong case by defining the problem or the challenge or the opportunity. It's always helpful if you can use data and research to help us understand the need for the proposed action. For example, one way to think about this is if we were not to intervene, what would the trajectory of a certain problem look like over time? That's always kind of helpful to get in the trustees in the mind before they see what you're suggesting as far as the body of the work. That leads us to, now that we know what the problem is, what are you going to do about it? So this is the description of the work or the solution. So this is where you're going to tell us broadly how you're going to address the problem or the challenge or opportunity. So in broad terms, what do you plan to do, and how will those things that you're trying to do benefit the folks that you're trying to serve? So here you're not going to get too deep into the weeds and the details, because you're going to be able to share greater detail in the following section. And that's the activity section, which is next. So here, now that we know what the problem is and we know what you're planning to do broadly, here's where you're going to tell us how you're going to do the work. You're really going to drill down from the broad description and the description of the work to provide specific action steps and a timeline. It's always helpful if you use a chronological bulleted list in some cases. This section could clearly communicate the logical plan with regard to conducting the work. Make sure these activities align with any and all budget line items that you share in your budget. Just as a point of reference, one of the ways the program staff works is that we'll look at the activity section and then we'll hold the budget right next to it. And if there's clear alignment between the two, it really helps us understand how you're going to do it and what the costs are associated with those activities. Next is probably one of the most difficult sections, I think, overall that we've encountered during the proposal process, and that's really trying to understand what your anticipated change in results are going to be. So, broadly, this is really what do you expect to be different after the grant is completed? And then how will you measure progress over the duration of the grant? It's always helpful if you're very specific, and if you have defined metrics and baseline data at the start, that will help you measure progress over time. It really helps the trustees understand what progress looks like and just roughly what their investment might yield. So being able to tell us what's different, for whom and for how many is very important. And also keep in mind, instead of using just numbers or just percentages that they don't really tell you much and doesn't give you much context, we ask that you use both. So using numbers and percentages here for quantitative measurements is very helpful, and it allows us to let us know how you're planning on measuring the work, and even in places where you can't measure, you can describe how you're going to measure the qualitative changes that the grant will yield. Continuation of funding is very straightforward. What are the plans and strategies for sustaining the work after the proposed duration of the request? And if there are none, that's okay. Just be clear about that too. Organizational capacity. This question is really zeroed in on, why is your organization, staff, or partners qualified to take on this work? Here you can kind of address who's overseeing the project and who's responsible for the work, and what is her past experience or his past experience. And finally, there's the learning from the work section. And previously, we admit this really wasn't very clear in the way that we had written it out in the proposals before. But going forward, we really want to know what you hope to learn by the end of the proposed grant period. Further, it's always helpful for us if we understand how you're going to take that learning and how it will benefit your organization. If others could benefit from it, we also want to learn how you're going to share that with them, but that was kind of where folks stopped at the last proposal based on what we asked. So again, I think when you think of learning from the work, it's really is what are you going to learn specifically and how is it going to benefit your organization? So in a nutshell, that's really kind of the programmatic angle on what makes kind of a cohesive and strong proposal. And I believe we're going to take a quick break so we can check in on questions and see if we have to respond to anything right now before Mark takes us through the live demo.
Okay, and just remember, if you are on the line and if you joined late, you can only hear us, we can't hear you. So you should use the chat window. You can see I pulled up the chat window here. So if you pull up chat, you can ask any questions of Chris before we launch into the live demo. And we'll wait a second to see if anyone's typing anything in. If not, I'm going to launch into the live demo in a second here and bring you into the portal and give you a tour around and show you how everything works. And you can enter questions. We aren't going to be checking them in real time because we are going to be doing that live demo. But again, at the end we will take more questions. So Candace Bryant, you had a question for us. Can we get copies of your summary? So yes, we will. So I'm assuming you mean the PowerPoint. So yes, we can send out a copy of the PowerPoint. We're also, as you saw, I started recording this, and so we'll have a recording of this available. So if you want to review it at any point or share it with your colleagues, you can do that as well. And we are going to be working this summer on some more short bite-sized videos as well. That'll be, more 1 to 2 minute focused videos on certain activities within the portal, so you wouldn't have to go through a whole webinar. And again, we will do these webinars once a quarter from here forward. So if you have new colleagues that join that you'd like to have see this, we will do live ones where people can ask questions. And you can always reach out to us in between if you have questions. So with that, I'm going to start with the live demo. So of course, the first question everyone always has is, well, how do I get to the portal? Well, we tried to make it really, really easy for you. If you remember before when you were applying, you would come to the DuPontFund.org website, and up in the top right corner, you would click on a section called Proposal Center, and that would bring you to a page that had the materials for download, PDFs, and instructions for you to work on your proposals. So we try to keep it really simple, and you'll see up in the right-hand corner here, we have something that says Proposal Center Login. So all we did was add a word to the end, and when you click there, it brings you to the portal. So at this point, you should, if you submitted your survey, you should have a user name established for your primary grant contact identified in the survey, and you should have received the username and password for that. If you haven't, reach out to us and we'll work with you to resend that so you have that username and password. But this is where you'll enter that information and sign in. So that's our live system. I'm not going to sign in there. I'm going to take us into our test system so we can play. And so when you sign in, this is what you'll see. So down the left-hand side here is the navigation, and all the changes and content will happen in this center area. So we'll walk through what the things are in that navigation, of course, but I'll just start by showing you a little bit about what happens when you land on this page and the content you see in the center here. So you notice we have a couple things in bold here, just to remind you, if you're seeking support from the fund, you always should establish contact with your assigned program officer by email or phone before you start working on a proposal. That was the case before, and it's the case with the portal. Sherry, if she was in here right now, she would. I just got a notice that our meeting timed out, which I don't know how or why that happened. I'm going to pause for 1 second, and if folks can hit the chat, that's a brand new thing that hasn't happened in any of our webinars, and let me know if you're still hearing me and still seeing the content. I only need one person to respond, but if someone could quickly just type into the chat and let me know you can still hear me and see the content on the screen. Okay, great. So Sabrina, you say you still hear me? All right, great. Sorry about that. That's never happened before. So technology, gotta love it, right? That's why we're doing the webinar. So again, contact by, if Sherry was in here, she'd tell you the same thing. This tool is meant to augment our relationship with you, not to replace it. You know, the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund has been a partner with you since it started in 1977, as you are all eligible organizations. So we want to maintain that personal relationship. So again, be sure to contact your program officer. And then another thing just to be aware of is be sure that you're saving your work. The portal doesn't auto-save content. So if you're a person that uses Google Apps, for example, you're familiar with those programs like Google Sheets or Google Docs. Everything you're typing, as you're typing, it's being saved. Right now, this platform doesn't do that. Again, it's not a huge deal as long as you don't walk away from your computer and shut things without closing it. We've had 70 proposals at this point come through the system, and we haven't had any issues around this, you know, but it's just something to be aware of. And there are some of the things we're going over on the demo today I have as written instructions. Again, we will be posting a recording of the webinar here that you'll be able to access and some shorter videos. But I want to bring your attention, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, this is the calendar for submission of competitive proposals. As you know, our competitive proposals are our largest grant awards and our most complex grant process that we have. And we have a specific calendar where we award funds 3 times per year. And it's a 2-stage process. So you have to have your proposal submitted and reviewed. The trustees ask questions and you answer those questions, and then they make a final decision. So you usually are, depending on your program officer, to provide you this calendar. You should still, you know, check with them to make sure it's accurate, but we will be maintaining and keeping this as accurate as possible. But all of those dates are revealed to you. So I'll just quickly walk you through. So for example, this next in-person meeting where we're awarding funds is June 29th and 30th. You can see that we have in the left column the date of the call or the actual in-person meeting. So again, to be in this, considered for funding at this in-person meeting, you had to be on the May 25th call, which meant we would have had to have had your draft proposal by May 5th and your final proposal after feedback from your program officer on May 12th. And then those go to the trustees for review on the May 25th conference call. And then if they invited you forward for the consideration at the 27th and 28th trustee meeting, there is a draft proposal deadline of June 2nd, and all final proposal responses to their questions are due by June 9th. And so that's just kind of left to right how that calendar works. So we have meetings all the way through February of 2017 there. Before we jump into creating a request, a lot of times I get a question, what browser should I use as our preferred browser? I'll tell you professionally and for the portal, I always recommend folks use Google Chrome. It's a free download. Google's best interest is to keep you safe on the web and to have the best browser because, you know, they want to sell you things through advertising, of course. So, you know, it tends to be the most secure and the most stable browser available. It works beautifully with this website and the portal. You will have great, if you use a Mac, Safari works just as well. Firefox works really great. I always recommend people stay away from Internet Explorer. There's always a lot of issues just because they don't really even support it anymore. Microsoft doesn't update it. They still put it on your computer, but it's actually not even a product that they support anymore. So we're going to dive right in here in the live demo, and I'm going to show you how you would create a request. So you'll notice on the left-hand side of the navigation, depending on the resolution of your screen, you might not see the whole menu. So you'll see if I scroll down here, I don't see reports until I scroll down because of the resolution of my screen. But this Create Request button never moves. It's always right down here in the bottom left of your screen. So I'm going to click on that real quick, and that is going to bring us to the page where we create a request. And so here you have the two types of applications that the fund has. Our initiatives application, which includes technical assistance, feasibility, people in need, diocesan enrichment if you are one of our dioceses, and repair and restoration, which are funds specifically for churches. And then again, competitive grants. These are for all of our competitive grants, and including phase 1 energy conservation and phase 2 energy conservation, which really are only for our independent schools and small liberal arts colleges. So most of the folks on the call, you'll be coming there for competitive grants. And for today's, you know, kind of walking through of creating an application, I am going to use a competitive request because it's our most complex process, and we'll kind of walk through how that whole process works. And then at the end, we'll quickly pull up an initiatives grant just so you can see that it's really the same process. It's just a simpler application. So again, on this page, you'll click the Apply Now button for the one you would like to apply for, and we're going to click on the competitive grant application. And it's going to take a second as it generates that application for you. And you'll see it brings up this application, and this is really your old page 1. Again, we have all of your information. This is a test organization I set up here. But all you have to do at this point is select your primary grant contact. In this case, I'm going to select myself and the head of your organization, and I'll select Jamie Neal. Now, why these two fields are important is because they really, most importantly, relate to email. So the primary grant contact, again, is most likely and most often the person you assigned your login to, but they're also the person that's going to get all the email that gets generated from this request. So as it moves through the process, and it goes, if it's granted, as it goes into being a grant request, they're going to get all the email that gets generated out of the system. The head of the organization is only going to get very specific emails. So they're going to get an email when it's submitted because their name is signed to it, so they need to know that it's been submitted. They're going to get an email when the grant is approved, and they will also get emails after, if it becomes a grant, if a report is overdue by 90 or 120 days. So there are 3 notices that happen for reports before that, but at 90 and 120 days, the primary grant contact and the head of organization both get emails. And so that really is one of the important things about those two fields. As far as folks, some folks like to work offline. You know, you like to be able to download the application, look at all the questions, and, you know, kind of type up your responses and come back and copy and paste rather than work in the tool. You know, the nice part is you can do both ways, but if you are a person that likes to work offline, you know, take note here. There are two things that you need to complete out of these fields before you save it and make a printable copy. The first is the type of organization you are. In this case, we're going to select nonprofit. If you're an education institution, it pulls up extra demographic charts and some other information we need from you. That's why it's important to choose that. And then request type, we're going to choose competitive. And if you chose phase 1 or phase 2, it brings up some specific questions for those. And at this point, you would hit the save button here at the top. It's going to take a couple minutes for it to save. Not minutes, but seconds. But it really does depend on your internet speed. I know we do have a couple folks from the Northern Neck on the call, and internet is a challenge in some of our rural areas, and so it might take you a few seconds longer to save. So once it saves, you see a set of new buttons across the top, including printable. At this point, you can click on the printable button, and it will open a new window for you here, where it will generate that entire application and all of the questions that you'll need to address, and you can then work offline and come back and copy and paste your thing. So you can save this as a PDF, print it out, whatever you like to do. So sorry here, let me get, these menus like to get in your way. So let me go ahead and minimize this for a second and get back to the window we were at. Okay, I can make this full screen again. Okay, so we're gonna go back inside the application again, and you'll see quickly, as soon as we saved it, it went straight into the drafts. You can come in and out and work on an application as many times as you'd like before you submit it. And all you have to do is come in and hit edit to continue to work on this application, save to save it, log out of the system, come back in a different day or hour or two later, continue to work, and then just submit when you're ready. So at this point, you're down in the grants details section, and you'll just enter a project title. We're looking for something 10 words or less. So, Bright Start program that focuses on 3-year-old literacy. Something simple that's just a quick project title. This is the geographic area served by proposal. Chris mentioned this before. Just be as specific as possible. Again, we're in Jacksonville here. We might be working in St. Johns County, which is a different county than Jacksonville. So you would enter that information here. And then here you're going to enter your project start and end date, and you click on the calendar, it'll pull this up. We'll just enter today. We'll pretend this is a multi-year grant, so we'll just pull this down to 2019 and select the 19th of May in 2019. And then you'll also notice some of our folks and work together with a non-eligible in partnership. In here, this new section, you can tell us, are you working with a partner? If you say yes, it will open up a section where you can provide the name of the partnering organization and their tax ID. If it's no, there's no extra fields. Next is the old page 2 of the application, where you do the finances and funding section. So this is where you'll talk to us about the total cost of the project. And so in this case, we're just going to say it's a $200,000 project, and you're requesting $150,000 from the fund. So that means you have $50,000 that you haven't accounted for yet. So let's say you're contributing $25,000. You have $25,000 left. That's where these next two sections below are where you should tell us about that. Tell us the amounts secured from other sources or amounts that you have requested or are pending from other sources. So in this case, we'll just say Foundation One has said they're going to give you $10,000, and that's secured. And you'll see it'll automatically add these up for you. And then Foundation Two is going to give you $5,000, and so on and so forth. And then the same for requested or pending from other sources. Excuse me for one second. Go ahead, just population groups, let's talk about that.
Okay, so Mark had to step out real briefly, so give me 1 second to catch up. Okay, so we're talking about population groups served by request. So here you're going to be able to go through with as much detail as you can, select the population groups for this proposal. So for instance, if you are a direct service provider and you're working with seniors, you'll select elderly and move over here. You may also select rural, you know, if they're urban, rural. Again, be as descriptive as you can, but, you know, again, just as long as we can get a sense of where we're headed, that's what's important. Gender, you're going to notice here that you can either choose, if you're focusing on female population, male population, both male and female, or as we begin to start talking about transgender populations more, you can choose gender neutral. So here we're going to talk about both males and females, seniors, and then we are going to go down to ages, and since we're focused on seniors, we're going to select the senior age group. Okay. So now we're going to get down to population served. So as we talked about a little bit earlier, when you're getting ready to write your questions and your kind of theory behind what you hope to achieve, there's kind of an understanding that you know who you hope to serve, right? So here's where you're going to try and do your best to explain and break down what that looks like. So for instance, let's see, our example here is focusing on seniors. This program is going to, we're going to focus on 15 African-American males, 15 African-American females, 2 Asian males, 1 Asian female. You get the idea. And you go through and be as descriptive as you can about the population that you're hoping to serve. Again, you won't always know this, but again, it helps us zero in on who you're planning on helping, and also kind of reinforces what your outcomes are going to be overall in your anticipated results. All right, and Mark's back.
Thanks. I had to step out for a second there, answer a question. So organizational profile is the next section, and this is the old page 3 and 4, depending on the type of organization that you were. And this is where you are going to talk to us about the governing board, the salaried staff and the hourly staff in this case, if you're a nonprofit or a religious organization. If you're an education organization, you have a few more demographic charts that you're going to fill out. I'm not going to belabor this. It's the same as above with the population served. Really, you're just going to give us raw data numbers, and this is going to build the tables for you, or it's going to subtotal everything, give us percentages. So really raw data numbers again. So you're just going to tell us the racial, ethnic makeup of your board, your salaried staff, and your hourly staff, and enter that data in these fields. One thing to note, if you don't have a certain racial makeup inside of your organization, so in the case of your board, if you don't have Hispanic males or females, just enter the number 0. It helps the chart calculate right. Otherwise, we have to come in afterwards and clean that up and add the zeros in for you. So if you don't have anybody, please do us the favor and add those zeros in. You know, other than that, it's just straight data entry. And so from there, you get right down to the narrative section. And so this is the meat of the competitive application. And so it really hasn't changed from before. So you, except those slight things. So before you had a cover letter, you had to have it signed and all these things. And for some of our institutions, it's a challenge. You know, our small colleges, the presidents are often fundraising and traveling, same with our independent schools. And sometimes it's hard to coordinate with them to get the signature. They're usually available to do edits and things remotely, but getting the signature sometimes can be a challenge. And so, you know, the case statement really, honestly, like Chris said earlier, is the same thing. You know, it should be from their voice and should talk about why it's important for the organization. So I'd like to just take a second here to show you a couple things. If you're the type of person that likes to work within the system, you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner here, there's a little caret. If you drag that down, you can make this window as large as you would like. So you could work like you're in Word on a normal piece of paper. You'll also notice down here in the light that there's a character count. So for the case statement, it's limited to 2,000 characters, which is approximately 1 page. And so you'll notice as I start typing, that character count is going down. And, you know, now I'm put some gobbledygook in there and I'm down to 1983 characters. So if you're the type of person that works offline, I'm going to open Word real quick and show you something that you need to know. Yeah, and so just I'm going to again type some gobbledygook in here, highlight that text to know how many characters you're at and what's compatible with our system. Hit the review button and go to word count, and you'll see characters with spaces, because you're going to see a lot of things. Words, characters, no spaces. You need to be looking at characters with spaces as your count. So that's 17 characters. And that, if you're copying and pasting over, just make sure you're at 2,000 characters or less. But if you would like to work in the system, again, there's most of the features that you would need are available and simplified and available for you right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and type some real text here, like test title. So if you wanted to have something titled, you could bold it, italicize it, center it. If you have text that you want in a chronological list, of course, you have the ability to do a numbered list, a bulleted list, indent, increase indent, decrease indent. So again, most of the basic type of formatting things that you need to do within a proposal, you can do right here within the window. So, I'd like to encourage you to work within the platform because I think it's really easy to use and friendly, and you can get, things looking really nice and clean and beautiful within the system. Because it is a rich text editor, though, about 95% of the time, everything you copy over from Word should copy perfectly. There's going to be some cases where things don't copy perfectly, but there shouldn't be a lot of cleanup if you're the type of person that copies and pastes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time typing in to these text boxes because you don't really need to see those kinds of things from me. You'll notice below we start the proposal narrative, and there are some instructions here because, as we said in this first case statement, you were limited to 2,000 characters, which is about 1 page. One of the things that we did in the competitive proposal was we grouped all of the boxes together for all the questions we ask you, and you're limited to 10,000 characters that are shared between all of these boxes. And let me demonstrate that for you. And the reason we did that is because everyone tells their story differently. Some people need to spend less characters in, for example, organizational capacity because it's, kind of core work that you do. But, maybe the rationale is something that's new to the organization. So you need to spend a little bit more to talk about the research that brought you to why you need to do this work. And so you get to choose how you spend your characters in all these fields. We don't tell you and limit you by field. So you'll notice that as I start typing in here, the character count is going down in this field, but it's also going down in all of these other fields as well. So it's 9989, 9989. So again, that 10,000 characters is shared between all of those fields. And so that is noted up here in the instructions. Then also, if you work outside the portal and are pasting information, to make sure that the character count works right, you either have to paste into the field using key commands, and we tell you what those are on a Mac or a PC, or if you're the type of person that, copies everything and right-clicks and copies and pastes, just make sure after you paste in your content that you hit the space bar. Otherwise, that character count won't update, and you'll notice it didn't update until I pressed that, that space bar. And so again, both of those notes are there just to tell you to be sure, because again, you won't be able to save if you are beyond the character count. So just be careful about paying attention to that character count and work within that 10,000 character limit. And again, that's equivalent to about 3 pages, which was what you had before. The other thing you'll notice is you no longer have to tell us your organizational mission and summary because we collected that from you in the survey. And we get that to the trustees in a different way, so that gives you some character count back. And again, Chris went over all of these fields: rationale, description of the work, activities, anticipated change results, continuation funding, organizational capacity, learning from the work. And so you will just go field by field and either paste your information in or write your text inside the tool and answer those questions. And then we get to the section for trustee-specific questions, which we'll talk about shortly, so you can ignore that for now. And then we're at upload documents. So uploading documents is really simple. We tell you what is required. So in the case of a competitive grant, we require a proposal budget, your most recent audited financials, and a list of board members. Now, there is something new here. We did provide you with a template for 1-year and multi-year grants, which we hope you find helpful. So I'm going to click on multi-year. It's going to open Dropbox quickly. If you don't have Dropbox, don't worry, it's automatically going to open and allow you to download this. But you'll see we've laid out a simple one-page spreadsheet for you. You can edit it to your heart's content. It's already set to calculate for you and do all of the work for you. You can delete categories, delete line items, or add them. You can even change the font size. Just remember that people actually have to read this, so you know, try and keep it at a reasonable font. You know, we would encourage you not to go below 10. This is, I think, set at 12. So we have this for a 3-year set up here, but you can add in years if you need to, and we also have a single year available to you. And we're hoping that helps you out. Of course, feel free to use your own budget. The only limitation is you have to keep it to 1 page. Uploading documents is really simple. All you have to do is click on this little green button here, and you have 2 choices. So you can either drag and drop files into the window to upload them, or you can upload them in the traditional way through the file browser. So I'll do that. So we're going to go ahead and select Add Files, and I'm going to go select this file here, hit Open. You'll see it will add it. And we have a drop-down available for you here where you can tell us what kind of document it is. This isn't a required field, but it does help the program officer identify it with you, what you are putting here. So we have draft budget, final budget, list of trustees, most recent financial audit, price quotes, credentials for consultants, and other documents. And so in this case, we are going to pretend this is a draft budget. And then at this point, all you have to do is hit Start Upload. You'll see it'll start counting down. And as soon as it's uploaded, you get a little green check mark. And then you can click away from the window, and it will automatically add to the window here. And an important thing to note here, you'd see that there is no delete button. There's a reason for that. You need to contact us if you want to delete something. It's not a big deal, it only takes us a couple seconds to do it. But the reason that we do this is because if this becomes a grant, it is a permanent record in our system, and we don't want these documents to be deleted by accident, because you, like us, will have a historical record available to you forever, and you'll see that as we start to go through the navigation in a moment. And so you can come back and look at your past grants, download your past documents that you uploaded, and all of the things you'll have access to at your fingertips in the centralized portal. We don't want those documents to get deleted, because we do reference our documents in a historical manner over time. So we don't want to lose them. So that's why you can't delete them, and it's not a big deal. We delete them all the time for folks. So just remember, you have to contact us, and we won't open documents unless it's submitted. Last but not least is the application acknowledgement. Again, remember, if you're the primary grant contact and you're not the head of the organization, when you check this box, you're signing for them, and they are getting an email that you're submitting a grant request. So of course, the head of organization should know that this grant request is being submitted before you submit it. And it's simple. We didn't want to do something like that required you to register at a different site, you know, like DocuSign. We just wanted to keep it really simple for you. All you have to do is select this checkbox and fill in the head of the organization's name and title. And that's all you have to do. Hit save. And at this point, you are ready to submit. And so you'll see it's still over here in the draft section because we haven't submitted it yet. At this point, all you have to do is hit submit. This is always going to pop up. You can leave a note for your program officer. It's not required. In this case, I'm just going to X away from the field because I'm not going to fill anything out. Oops. Just hit OK to not fill it out, not X away from the field. It says unable to promote, so there's error messages found. So we don't have many required fields in here, but this gives you some clues. But again, unfortunately, this is language we can't change, but there's a lot of other clues that happen throughout the proposal. And again, we only have a few required fields. One of them is total amount requested from the fund, which we filled out. And then the other is down here at the bottom. You'll remember a moment ago, I didn't select the checkbox, even though I told you about it. You'll see things that are required will also show up in red and tell you what you must do before you submit it. The other thing you'll notice is it automatically enters you into edit mode because it assumes you do want to submit this grant. And I do want to submit this grant right now. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the head of the organization's name and check the box and hit save this time. I'm sorry for the time it takes, but it always takes a couple seconds. And this time when we hit the submit, the grant will go through and come to your program officer for review. And this grant will move from draft to submitted. Since we're in the portal in real time, it sometimes takes a couple seconds before the one moves from one to the other. And so we can refresh our screen and see if it moves for us. And there's our grant we were just working on for $150,000. So at this point, if you're familiar with our competitive process, which most of you are that have worked on those, you know it comes to your program officer and we would look at that proposal and provide you feedback. And sometimes that's a multi-stage process. And the nice part is this all happens straight through the system. Again, all centralized. You don't have to try and track emails, try and see where if you sent this attachment, everything happens right here within this one single proposal. So if a program officer sends something back to you with feedback, you're going to get an email that triggers, that tells you they sent it back to you. Most of the time, you're also going to get a call from your program officer. And then those proposals will end up in the to edit box here under requests. And so I have some test data set up here to show you how this works. Honestly, it's pretty much the same as a grant with a couple exceptions. First is you'll notice there is a new box here up at the top in blue that says action required, and it tells you there's a note that the program officer can leave you, and these will vary by program officer, so this is just a test note that I put in here. And then we'll give you some brief instructions on what to do. But you're seeing that they say, look for the small yellow sticky notes on the left side of the proposal for their detailed notes. And they've left you notes about these specific things. And so at this point, we're going to enter into edit mode. And so it's just like working on the grant when you were working on submitting it, except now you have some feedback, and I'm going to show you where that feedback is. The first area that they mentioned was geographic area served by proposal. And you'll see there's this little yellow sticky note that's here. And if I click that, it's going to open up notes from my program officer. And so you can see this has been through quite a few trainings at this point. I started out by serving the entire USA, and I'm already down to the shops of St. John's, which is a little set of shops in Jacksonville. So we have, gone back and forth, this program officer and I, and we've finally decided it's at the shops of St. John. And so we can say, you can make a comment. If you don't think that this needs to be changed, you can write a comment back to your program officer here. So say, this is okay, hit save, and that comment will go back to your program officer. You can make the change that they're requesting. You can clarify information for them inside of here. Or if you need to make a change, you can go right in this field, and we'll just say, we're Mojo number 4, which is one of my favorite restaurants that's there in the shops of St. John, is actually the geographic area served by that proposal. So, so you can make those changes just like you would with a normal grant. And you'll just keep doing that. You'll look for the notes that are in from your program officer. Look for those little yellow stickies. Here's another one in case statement. In this case, they're telling me that my case statement wasn't very compelling. I'm not surprised because I just really put a bunch of gobbledygook in there, and they wanted some more detail. So again, you'll make the changes that they are asking for and or communicate with your program officer through those. And then as soon as you've made the changes or communicated back through those stickies, you will save your proposal, just like you did with your normal grant. And then as soon as you're happy with all those changes, you'll hit submit and send that grant back to your program officer for another review based on your changes. And so that one you saw went pretty quick. And so inside submitted now, that $35,000 grant is showing up under submitted that we were just working on. And so you're starting to see a pattern, I'm hoping. Creating a request, working on a request is exactly the same no matter what process you're doing, and no matter what grant type you're working on. So we try to keep this as simple as possible for folks, and so again, that's the process for working back and forth with your program officer. So the final stage, of course, of the competitive grant is after the trustees review it on a phone call. If they invite you forward, they're going to have proposal-specific questions. Those will show up under final response. And so I have, again, some test data set up here. Similar to before, the program officer can leave you some notes here. But the questions from the trustees are always going to be in the same section. And so they're always going to be right after that last section, learning from the work, and right before upload documents. And so to answer the trustee questions, all you do is hit the edit button, just like working on a grant, just like working on a grant that was sent back for further revisions from your program officer. Scroll down, and in this case, we have 3 questions from the trustees that they're asking us for more about X, Y, and Z, and how do I know X, Y, and Z will work, and can I measure, how will I know more about measuring X, Y, and Z? So I would just go in there and answer those questions and send this back to my program officer. One thing you should note is occasionally, if you worked on a competitive grant with us for a program before, you know the trustee sometimes asks for something that you would upload. Internally, we will always ask you, the last question will always be any required uploads. It'll always have a text box below it. Don't feel like you have to put anything in the text box. But the reason we'll always put it last is because upload documents is the next thing after the trustee questions, so you can see right what they're asking you for here while you hit the green button and upload those documents. So, you know, that's something that we, of course, will do for you internally. But again, you will just enter some test, in this case, we'll enter some test data, but you'll answer those questions to the trustees, save that, and when you're ready to send those back for review by your program officer, you'll hit the submit button and send those back to your program officer for review. And again, you'll go through that same process. They may give you some feedback and some edits that you need to make to those, and then go back and forth as many times as you need to go back and forth. And really, folks, that's it for grant proposals. It's the same exact process as you work through that process. So just really quickly, I want to show you initiatives. Again, for folks that like to print things out, you'll notice when you launch an initiatives grant, there's really nothing here until you hit the request type. So in this case, I'm going to choose people in need. And now you'll notice the application fills in with content that's specific to that grant request type. So I picked this one for a reason because I want to show our folks on the line that our churches that use people in need grants similar to the budget, we have done something for you here that we think is going to be helpful to you. On the application, we've attached a matrix that you can get to. If you click on this link, it brings you to a spreadsheet that allows you to track all of the things that you do over the course of the year with your PIN funds. So you can, again, this auto calculates for you, so you can, if let's say in the first month you give $500 to someone for rent, you can enter $500, one person served. And then the next month you serve 2 people for $1,000, you can change this to $1,500, 3 people served. It will start averaging for you and adding everything up. And we have, you could see it has broken things down in more detail. We are trying to understand more how this money is being used without getting personal information from the people you're serving. So when you're reporting to us, we are asking for some more detailed information like this. So this spreadsheet should help you track the kinds of things that you're helping people for when you're giving them money for housing, the type of things you're helping them for when you're giving them money for healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's available to you. And similarly, just like a competitive grant with technical assistance and feasibility and things of that nature, in the uploads document section, we also have a sample budget available for you there that you can get and use, just like a competitive grant. And I'm not going to go through this whole grant process again here because it's exactly the same as working with a competitive grant. So at this point, I'm just going to quickly guide you through the navigation and show you reports. If you want to see what we have on file for your organization, under My Organization, this is the basic information that we have on file for you. If you move or need to update this information, click this little By Email button. It will open up your email program of choice, and you can email us the changes to your contact information and send that to us, and we'll make the changes for you. Users is going to be your primary grant contact, the person you identified that we assign the login to. And that is editable. So if you hit edit, you can update this. So if the person changes, you can change that. Or if your job title changes or something like your email gets updated, you can just change those things in here. There's also a place you can change your password. So we assigned you a default password. We encourage you to change it. The instructions we gave you tell you how to come to this part. You enter your new password twice, hit save, and you'll have that new password to sign in with. Grants will show you a historical record over time. Of course, grants that you did before this system launched will still be in here, but they aren't going to have a lot of rich information. But you can still see some basics of grants that we did with you over time. So what they were for, how much they were for, grant numbers, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, going forward, it'll be rich, detailed information, including the feedback back and forth from your program officer, are all going to be available for you to review at any time. So active grants, so things that are currently open, will show here, and closed grants, so any grant that you've finished reporting for and is closed will show up under closed. And so you have a complete grant history with the fund that you can reference at any time. And this is great when you have a new leader coming in and you want to introduce that relationship over time. Likewise, with payments, you can see scheduled payments, so things that are due to come to you from the fund and the date that they're due to come to you, and things that have been paid. And so this is useful, of course, for an audit trail. So if you have an auditor that comes in, they can see this information. And also, let's say you were expecting this check and you come in and see that it was paid, and this was paid on 3/11/2016. It's now May. If you haven't received it yet, probably you should call your program officer, because it's likely that it was lost in the mail, because we do still, of course, mail checks. It's something that won't change anytime soon. So we would put a stop payment on that and research that, put a stop payment, and reissue that check out to you. And last but definitely not least is reports. And so the report section, of course, is where you talk to us about the grants that were awarded to you that are either in process or are closing. And so as you were awarded a grant, we'll assign all of the reports that are going to be due over time. So any reports that are due for that grant are going to show up under due. And you'll notice here you're going to be able to see the type of report it is, when it's due. And so in this case, both of these are due at the end of May. So you're going to get an email about 14 days before these are due. And you'll get an email at 30, 60, 90, and 120 days past due as well that comes out of the system. And that will go to the primary grant contact for all of them. and go to the head of the organization for 90 and 120 days overdue. And so let's just say you want to work on your people in need report. So you'd go to reports, then due. You would click on the people in need report. And the only difference between a grant is you don't have to generate this. It's already generated for you. So at this point, all you have to do is hit edit to go into the report. And every report is set up exactly the same. We give you the request ID number, the description of the grant, and when it's due, and we already have your organization name and stuff filled out. And so all we give you some brief instructions of what we require and expect. And so you fill in your data. So it will automatically tell you how much you receive from us there. So let's just say your congregation contributed $5,000 and you secured $2,000 from other sources. And then this is where you're going to enter the data for how much you gave and to how many people you served. And again, if you use that matrix that I showed you briefly a moment ago, you can just copy and paste those numbers in. And so you'll enter the data that we're asking for, answer any questions that we have for you. So in this case, we have a few short narrative questions we ask you for. And if we require any uploads, we'll tell you. In the case of people in need, we don't require any uploads. You'll hit save as soon as you enter all the information and then hit submit. And again, that is the same for any report you'll see with technical assistance. It's exactly the same, except you don't have as many boxes around. Yours is more of a narrative report than giving us kind of data points. And we do have some required uploads for you. And so again, it's a pretty short standardized report. We think this will help you focus on what we need to know instead of trying to guess what we need to know. And once you submit those, any submitted reports show up under submitted. And just like a grant, your program officer will review those. And if they have feedback or need additional information or clarification on your report from you, they will send those back. And those you'll get an email as soon as it's sent back to you. Those show up under incomplete reports. And you'll notice, just like a grant, when we open it up, you have the action required box. And it gives you some notes. And anywhere that they need more information from you has a yellow sticky. So you can open that yellow sticky, see their exact note, answer them back in here, and or go into edit mode and make your edits, and then resubmit your report to them. And once it's approved, all your approved grants show up here. Lastly, this is a quick way to change your password. You can just come down below, create request, click change password. It'll launch this screen, and you can put in your current password, new password twice, hit change password, and that will quickly change your password. And so with that, I am going to stop the live demo and pull up the chat box and see what questions we might have from folks. Okay, so right now I don't see any questions. So I am going to just be quiet for a moment and see if anyone has any questions they want to type into the chat box. See, it looks like we still have 15 participants on the line with us. I hope the portal seems clear and easy to use. The nice part is, again, everything is centralized and accessible to you in one location. Again, we only assign one login per organization to one primary contact, but you can share that amongst people in your organization. I'll use a church for an example. You may have one person that works on a technical assistance grant, another person that works on a people in need grant. You just share that. Login between the two people and work on it. So I see I have a question from Candace Bryant. Do you have to return to application to access data for PIN grant report? No, the application, so PIN grant reports, most people do the report and the application at the same time. So you don't really need to return to it. You know, when the application is available to you, that matrix is there. Once you download that to your desktop, you can have that on your desktop forever and just you reuse it year after year, download yourself a new copy. But most folks with PIN grants, you do your report first, enter all your data in your report, submit that, and then most people go directly to the application and then apply for the next year's PIN grant. Now remember, until the report is totally complete and approved, we don't award the next round of PIN funding. So you shouldn't have to return to the application because there's really not a lot of information on the application. The matrix is a downloadable document, so that doesn't live there, but that reporting goes there. So Kirkland has a question: if I'll be submitting the grant request, but I'm not the person who will be reporting, who makes the most sense to be the primary grant contact? So really, that's up to your organization. You know, again, it's the primary grant contact's going to get all of the email that comes out of the system. So it's just how are the systems of communication set up at your organization? You know, your organization may have many grants open, and you're working on one grant, but other people are working on a different proposal and the reporting that's attached to that. So really, the person that's your primary grant contact should be a good communicator, know who's working on the grant request and the reports that are associated with that grant request, and be working with you to help get those reports submitted after a request was approved, if it's approved. And so hopefully that makes sense. So I see Jack Simpson, no questions, looks clear. So thanks for that. We think you'll like it. We like it a lot. So is population served actual numbers or percentages? That's a great question, Wendy. So, you know, we're just looking for you to get as accurate as possible. So you're going to put actual numbers in those. It doesn't take percentages, but this isn't something to necessarily stress out about. So you're just looking at your proposal and who are you trying to target? So I'm going to go back to that Bright Star example because it's a grant that I've recently worked on. So, you know, over the course of 3 years, that about 60 children will be served. And so what is that approximate breakdown? If you don't hit 60 or you exceed 60, you know, this isn't a go back and, you know, kind of penalize you or anything like that. It's really for us to be able to get a basic, and for our trustees to get a basic idea as they're reviewing proposals, who in this community that's located, you know, in this geographic region are we going to reach through this work, you know, approximately. So, you know, you'll be using actual numbers. And so you really should be focusing on the proposal. And sometimes those are pretty broad numbers, you know, so some of our energy grant requests, for example, are going to take place over a campus. And so those numbers are going to mirror your campus numbers. So, you know, talk to your program officer. They'll help you figure out what the right numbers are for you to plug in there. So, you know, we work together with you. Again, this is a tool to help us work together, not to replace it. Any other questions from folks? You're welcome, Jane. All right, I'm going to wait about 1 more minute. We're not strangers, so yes, Ella, we will be sending out a copy of the PowerPoint. We remain available to you as well if you have questions that pop up as you begin to work on things, or if there's anything else that you need to know as you're starting to, you know, come to grips with the system. Again, remember, this is a live system, so please don't go in and just start putting in requests if you don't plan on, you know, following through on them. So reports, of course, you can go in and start working on due reports without submitting them. It's really like working on a grant. And you can get a feel for the system through any report that's already assigned to you, you know, and kind of delete any content before you really start working on a report. So just keep that in mind as you start to play in the system. Thanks, Candace and Scott. All right, well, I'm not seeing any new questions pop up. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Be in touch if you need anything from us. Start, of course, with your program officer, and they'll put you in touch with me if they need to. All right, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.